The rumors have been piling up, the storm has been brewing, we've all been expecting a Pokemon announcement to happen soon, and it has happened. The Pokemon Company gave us a slew of Pokemon news, the biggest of which was the announcement of Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee. I could talk about how basically every rumor surrounding these games was true, including some stuff that seemed really obviously fake, but that's for another day. Right now I'm here to give you my initial feelings on the reveal, my hot take as it were. I believe that's what the kids are calling it these days. Before we get too far though, let's go over what we're dealing with here. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are coming to the Switch this November, and they take us back to Kanto once again. Only the original 151 Pokemon are here. This looks like basically another remake situation like Fire Red and Leaf Green. The games seem to be modeled more after Yellow though. Your starter is either a Pikachu or an Eevee, naturally depending on which game you choose. I am presently unsure if this is like all remake with the same story and everything, or if it's more of a reimagining, you know, like a brand new story in the old locations. I hope it's the latter, but you know, we'll see. The game is deeply tied to Pokemon Go. You can trade Pokemon back and forth, and perhaps most notably, the act of catching a Pokemon is like it is in Go. You flick the Joy-Cons at the screen to throw your Pokeball and even use a funky little ball thing with a light on it. I'll go into the finer details in a moment, but first, I just want to say about the overall concept, I think this is one of those rare cases where I look at a product and I go, this was the exact most perfect thing for them to do. Like, see, and I wouldn't be saying that outside of this context. If this trailer was all they gave us, I would be like, oh my gosh, this is the new Pokemon. The series is going fully casual. This is a nightmare. But no, they made sure to tell us that the next big, new, real Pokemon games are coming next year. And based on how everything has been presented, I'm entirely assuming that those will be everything we want. They'll be the Pokemon games on Switch, you know, the next generation. I could be completely wrong, but that's the way I'm feeling right now. So with that in mind, this is just perfect. Pokemon is already big, but there's no doubt that Pokemon Go pulled in a lot of newcomers, and also people who only played the first games back in the day, often referred to by the Pokemon community with more than a little contempt, Gen 1ers. These games are meant to finally bridge the gap and get people into the newer games. They're transition games. They're designed to appeal to people who like Pokemon Go, and of course if those people end up liking Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, next year they're going to be looking at those Pokemon games, and suddenly getting back into the series feels a lot more manageable. Especially considering by that point they would have a Switch, which will be, you know, pretty important for playing the new Switch Pokemon games. Basically, it's a way to take those Go fans and ease them into what an actual Pokemon game is. It's like, hey, you got introduced to the Pokemon universe, now let's see what it's like when you plug it into the core gameplay mechanics. Dip your toe in, Go players, and see that the water is fine. These games feel like they serve as something of a bridge for the developers as well. They had the chance to get Pokemon running on the Switch, and I'm sure the next games will be built on that foundation. I do definitely hope that they end up looking a good amount better than this, as this really does just look like up-res 3DS games. It's a little easier for me to forgive the graphics in this case though, seeing as in addition to being stepping stones for Game Freak and new fans, they feel like stopgap titles for Nintendo as a publisher. They needed Pokemon games on their Switch, and I'm sure these were relatively cheap and quick to make. I might be singing a different tune when I see the full price tag, but right now it makes sense to me. They're kind of placeholders. They're to get the ball moving before next year, and that makes me a little more receptive to a, you know, plainer looking presentation. And an interesting thing about them is that they kind of feel like spin-offs, but we won't really know how spin-offy they are until 1, we get to play them ourselves, and 2, we see how the next Pokemon games turn out. There are some pretty big changes in these games. In addition to the capturing mechanic, it looks like there are no more random encounters. You can see Pokemon before you run into them. Then there's also co-op play, which is awesome, but it's like, is this Game Freak showing off how Pokemon is changing? Will the next games also feature this Go-style capturing invisible Pokemon on the field and co-op? Or are those features exclusive to Go Pikachu and Eevee? That's why it's hard to tell if we can classify these as spin-offs. I mean, they're definitely simpler than the other core Pokemon games, however, they're still RPGs. From the trailer, it looks like they're about as simple as the originals, so definitely easier for newcomers to swallow than Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but still fully fledged games. Still Pokemon games. Me though, I do hope some of this new stuff makes it into the next games, or more accurately, I just hope this signals a series shakeup. For example, Skyward Sword is considered by many to represent the Zelda series kind of losing its way. However, there were tons of elements in that game that broke series tradition, and that ended up being something of a herald for the total reimagining that was Breath of the Wild. I don't necessarily think that Pokemon has lost its way, per se. I haven't played the newer games, but they do look pretty great. It does sound like it needs some fresh blood, though. It needs what Zelda got. The creators sitting down and just being like, what do these games have that they don't need to have, and what could be improved? I want them to rethink the stuff they established way back in Red and Blue, break series tradition, and have a fresh start. I don't know exactly how encountering Pokemon will work in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but I love the idea of ditching random encounters. I also don't know how co-op will work, but I love the idea of adventuring with a friend in the future. So yeah, in conclusion, I'm pretty into this whole thing. Transparency time, I also haven't played Pokemon Go because I'm cheap and don't have data on my phone, so I'm not particularly interested in all the Go integration. Also, I can't really see myself carrying around a little Pokeball and like touching it and stuff. A little weird, but I can completely see how this is all a great idea and how a lot of people are gonna be into all that. And again, if I thought this was it, that this was the Switch Pokemon, I'd be pretty sad right now. But we know it's not. Technically, they could still do something or other to ruin the core series and make it more casual or whatever, but these games put me at ease. This way, it's like everyone gets what they want. They don't have to cram a bunch of stuff that panders to the Go audience in the next big Pokemon games, because instead they're giving those people their own games. This year, they get their simpler, stepping stone, Go-flavored, nostalgia-driven Kanto reboot, and next year, everyone else, presumably, but again, I'm confident, gets the real deal. It's win-win. Or, I guess if you count Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, it's win-win-win-win. That's 4 wins. Can't argue that. Feels good. It feels good, you know? It feels good to finally have a much clearer picture of what Pokemon looks like on Switch. This November, we will be getting Pokemon on our Switches. Kind of. I mean, definitely yes, but also kind of. You know, I mean, it is Pokemon, but it's also kind of a little... I don't know. It's a little confusing. Get out of here, though. I want to go play Pokemon Quest.